was a program spraying aluminum and other heavy metals up into the atmosphere, and so I wanted to check it out. And that's the first way that chemtrails showed up for me. Basically, chemtrails is a geoengineering program where airplanes fly at high altitudes and they spray chemicals into the atmosphere, including aluminum, barium, and strontium. And then those metals fall to the ground and they land in our bodies, on the soil, in our trees, in our food, and in our water. Many people confuse chemtrails with the normal jet contrails. The difference is that the normal jet contrails actually dissipate within minutes, while the heavy metals in the chemtrails cause those trails to persist for hours. And it's not a hypothetical thing. There are 32 states that already have legislation that's related to weather modification. The U.S. agencies that are documented to be involved in it include the U.S. Air Force, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. Department of the Interior, the National Science Foundation, and I know China boasted about using cloud seeding and weather changing before the 2008 Olympics in order to keep that opening ceremony dry. So,
I'm Richard Jordan, chairman of the conference. I'm going
This
to
is at a
just
UN
introduce,
meeting.
Khaled,
United
who will,
Nations
introduce the speakers. So, Khaled, thank you very much
webcast.
for moderating the session, and I turn it over to you, and I will return in about 3
It's like
minutes.
C-SPAN, but at the United Nations.
Dr. Rosalind Peterson, she's the California president and co-founder
Talking
of the
about agricultural
Coalition formed
defense.
in 2006 to protect agricultural crop production from uncontrolled experimental weather modification programs. A very interesting topic, for a non-specialized person like myself.
Unspecialized like himself, probably like the rest of everybody in the world. Because they're doing this in secret.
Contamination in Martinez, California.
But it's kind of hard to spray shit in the sky without people noticing. People are noticing. Just gotta look up. Stop looking at your fucking smartphone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman. It is a pleasure to be here and speak with all of you today. One of the things that I would like to say is that we are in a global drumbeat right at the moment, talking about climate change and global warming. One of the things that is affected by climate change is agriculture. But some of what we are seeing is man-made, but man-made in a different way than you may guess. Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States, are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs that I know of today, and this is all public record, are available at any time with oversight, agricultural oversight.
Meaning there's
or public
nobody
oversight.
regulating this.
These programs impact agriculture, and there are programs around the world. International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify.
Yeah, that chemicals coming from airplanes. This was in March 23rd, 2014. This has been going on for close to a decade almost.
Weather. So one of the things that I'm concerned about,
I'd say a little over 5 years.
address in the
And look at
future
these
is how
people.
these
Look at these
programs
people.
are
Do they even seem to give a fuck? Look at this lady. Looking at your damn camera. She's paying attention. I think she's listening. She might be writing something down. She seems to look like she's sleeping. This guy's writing something down. She's writing something down. Yeah, some of them are writing stuff down. I don't know what's going on with this guy. He might be looking at his phone. Don't seem to really be paying attention. Oh yeah, dog, shut up.
Microclimates needed for our crops to survive. And
Yeah, that's a
for
pretty shitty picture,
pollination.
but this is taken by her.
If we change the growing season, the pollinators may not survive.
Yeah, that's
and
not a
also
cloud.
Our crops, our flowers, and our tree crops may not get the pollination needed. So one of my areas is looking at this situation to see if we can begin to put under control experimental and other types of
Put
weather
under
modification
control,
programs.
meaning
The
stop
other
them
issue
completely.
is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather
I'll tell you how to
undefined
mitigate
term
climate
at
change.
this period of time.
Stop burning fossil fuels. The water-powered engine is real. The electrical powered engine is real. We don't need to burn fossil fuel. The only reason people are still burning fossil fuels is because they're being forced to. They don't have a choice. All these big giant corporations like Standard Oil and BP, no, they want people to keep buying their product. They want people to keep burning that shit. So they're gonna do whatever the fuck it takes to make sure their product still is being sold. Even if people have to die. It's not the first time people have died over oil.
Happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere
Sulfur,
in what they call
barium,
geoengineering schemes to
strontium,
reduce
aluminum,
and
just
help
to name a
the
few.
planet, supposedly, but help the planet to not go through such a tremendous global climate change and to mitigate global warming. However, the incidence of putting chemicals into our atmosphere is going to change and impact agricultural crop production. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Studies at the University of Illinois on corn crop production show reductions. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production not only here in the United States, but worldwide. One of the things that is impacting crop production right now in the United States and reducing photosynthesis and also impacting the ability of solar power panels to generate the type of power that they should is persistent jet contrails. NASA talks about persistent jet contrails as exacerbating global warming because they trap warmth in the atmosphere when they produce cirrus and man-made clouds. NASA also talks about that that these aircraft leaving persistent contrails are changing our climate. And when they change our climate to the degree that one jet can leave a persistent jet contrail, which will spread across our skies from what this picture up here on my left on the screen looks like, which is a trail left by a jet, that trail can expand to 4,000 kilometers and last for 20 hours. This was unheard of in the early 60s and the 70s, and it wasn't until the late 1980s that there was a change and we started to have persistent jet contrails that persist. NASA studies show that part of our global warming problem could be attributed to these types of contrails and the jets that leave them. So one of the issues as we go through is
I'm
how
only
do you
20.
like
I
your
haven't been here
skies,
since
natural or
1980s. I
man-made?
stand corrected.
And right now,
It's been going on for
we
more than a
are
decade.
making man-made clouds, and this is trapping warmth in our atmosphere. The climate change that is produced by these jets, not all jets, mostly some non-commercial, but what happens to our skies
Not all
is
jets.
that we start
I've
to see the
seen
changes.
jets and planes
The
that don't even
man-made
have a
clouds
damn
do trap the
contrail.
warmth, and
They don't have any
increase the
trail.
humidity. This allows for
I don't know
pests
why
to proliferate,
all planes should be
diseases,
that way.
molds, mildews, funguses, and viruses. This is a man-made cloud, ladies and gentlemen, and these pictures I took myself over Northern California, and this is a burst. This is where a jet left a huge plume, and then this turned in at the end of it to a burst. And this is not the jet trail just before the burst. This is our skies, and I want you to know that what you're seeing now, a lot of times many scientists know, especially at NASA and in other areas, that the skies that we're seeing are not normal cloud formations. These are man-made. And what happens as we reduce the amount of sunlight in a form of global dimming, we reduce the solar power with these type of clouds, and we reduce photosynthesis, which is going to impact agriculture. The pictures look odd. The formations in here is you can start looking up and seeing this. What happens is that there are
those aren't
experiments,
clouds.
and there's a color, you can see some color in this photograph. And part of what we're doing also is we're trying to experiment with our ionosphere. And when we modify and experiment with our ionosphere up here, we create experiments which they can
If you Google what are the parts of the atmosphere, there is no ionosphere.
For long periods of time, and they can watch
They would be
the
creating
experiments.
another part of the
The type of
atmosphere.
chemicals they are using are aluminum, barium, strontium, and these canisters are sent up on rockets, and what they do is they superheat the canisters to create experiments in our atmosphere. The experiments can give you colorful auroras, which they talk about as being wonderful. Many times people think that the auroras in Alaska and the ones we see are normal, but there's beginning to be more and more seen across the United States and elsewhere where trimethyl aluminum experiments to make clouds are beginning to impact us. The reason I am concerned for agriculture is that none of these experiments have any public oversight nor agricultural oversight. Our drinking water is impacted because the chemicals are now beginning to show up in our drinking water. In California, the State Department of Health drinking water tests were examined between 1970 and this year, and we found unusual spiking in barium, aluminum, strontium, magnesium, calcium, manganese. And all of these spiked at the same time in various drinking water supplies across the state of California and also in Arizona.
I wonder what
So
fluoride's
what's
looking
happening
like.
with these atmospheric tests is that aluminum, as one example, gets into, with increased pollution and acid rain, gets into the root systems of our crop trees and our trees, and it looks like the trees are dying of drought. But they're not. What happens is that the root systems can no longer absorb the water and the nutrients needed to survive. Many